The province of Cyrodiil is absolutely packed with hidden valuables and easily missed loot. Things that can empower your character from early through to late game, or are otherwise just awesome finds. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at 25 hidden free gifts that you can find more or less at any point in Oblivion. But before we get to that, a quick word from today's video sponsor. OperaGX is back, this time to turn your boring old everyday browser into the ultimate hub of a fantasy adventurer. With OperaGX's browser, you can customize pretty much everything to have the exact looks, sound, and feel of an Elder Scrolls game. OperaGX has thousands of different live wallpapers, from this gorgeous one of Skyrim's mountains and stars to the warm, cozy inn of the popular Barstool Baggins mod. There's also background music to make you still feel like you're wandering the world of Tamriel even whilst browsing, as well as audible keystrokes and tapping sounds, which again come straight out of these game worlds. Opening or closing a tab with the Oblivion mod sounds like opening or closing your inventory, for instance. Ditto with Skyrim's. There's also custom fonts and icons from different browser mods, each of which we can customize interchangeably. You may prefer the wallpaper of the Skyrim mod, for instance, but still want the background music of Oblivion. It's all very easy to customize at any time from mod settings. Also, if you're the type to listen to videos like this in the background, there's also a very simple video pop-out feature. Just click this little icon, and the video will appear in the bottom corner of your screen, following you across tabs whilst you go about other business. And finally, transferring from your boring old browser that can't do this stuff is the easiest thing ever. Just go to Opera's settings, scroll down to synchronization, import bookmarks and settings from whatever your browser was, and that's it. It's like you've always used OperaGX. So check it out via my link down below to create your perfect browser experience. And now it's back to Cyrodiil. Up first is something that we actually start the game with, though it's also something you'll probably throw away without thinking about long before realizing the unique value of this item. I'm talking, of course, about our prisoner wrist irons, shackles worn in the gauntlet slots and classifying as an item of clothing. In fact, they're the only item of clothing in-game that is worn on the hands, and are thus very important to any later game magic builds. You see, wearing armor in Oblivion actually reduces the percentage effectiveness of our spells by a small percentage. Thus, if you're playing a mage wanting to maximize spell effectiveness, you'll want to wear clothing and not armor. It's actually easy enough to obtain the maximum 85 armor rating with magic through a high alteration skill anyway. The wrist irons, being an unenchanted piece of hand clothing then, can later on be enchanted with anything to further bolster your specific build. Say a flat boost to our total magicka pool, or a shield effect to make up some of that armor rating. You can apply these enchants, of course, at Frostcrag Spire, but also make sure to check your sigil stones from closing Oblivion gates first for potentially even better enchantments. What's that, I hear you say? You chucked those things after playing for about half an hour, not realizing their value? Well, that's just too bad for people playing the original version without the DLC, because luckily, with Remastered having all the original DLC, there are a couple more sets scattered about, the simplest of which can be acquired in Deepscorn Hollow, in the cloister segment where we keep our cattle person on the floor next to a skeleton. Up next, Glarthir of Skingrad is a curious fellow. An anxious bookworm convinced that some organization, or perhaps all of them, are having him followed. And though he can't pinpoint specifics or come up with any real evidence, he will employ our character to find out more when we first visit Skingrad. I've actually investigated pretty much every outcome to this quest in my worst decisions video, which I'll link in the description below. For this video though, I'm more concerned with Glarthir's house and the ingeniously hidden stash of gold contained within. Just inside his front door to the right is a perfectly inconspicuous basket, though one that contains 800 septims. A very nice amount to simply pick up, particularly early in the game, that doesn't even class as stolen, depending on the outcome of Glarthir's quest. If you want a little more context to the inner workings of Glarthir's mind for said quest as well, then head into his basement whilst you're here, and have a read of Glarthir's notes. They further explain his suspicions, mainly of the three people he sends us to follow. Frostcrag Spire may not be my absolute favourite home in Oblivion, but it is the one I visit the most, namely thanks to its sprawling storage room, respawning garden, and alchemy boosting bench, as well as the spellcrafting and enchanting altars, the latter of which will of course require a steady supply of soul gems for the enchanting of equipments, preferably grand ones too, given they make the enchantments most powerful. What you may not realise though, is that Frostcrag Spire also has its own replenishing source of grand soul gems hidden in its vaults. By casting Soul Trap on one of these little mini imps called Vault Guardians, it'll attack us, and defeating it will harvest a grand soul. These guys also respawn like the garden upstairs, so you can effectively farm them for your enchanting. And even if you don't have an abundance of grand soul gems, provided you've obtained Azura's Star and not given it away to Martin like a fool, you can just do a repeating cycle of harvesting one grand soul, enchanting one item with it, then doing the same again. A brilliant time-saving tactic, which makes this place even more valuable for mages. In the Imperial City Arena District, outside the arena itself, head around to the back and look for two warriors named Branwen and Salith. Head over to their bedrolls and crouch down behind this pillar where you can't be seen to open their shared chest. Very hard locks can be picked extremely easily with either the skeleton key from Nocturnal's Daedric quest or a high-level lock spell from the Alteration School, or you could just get really good at the lockpicking minigame. Inside are some books on fighting, a nice amount of gold, and the unique gauntlets called the Bands of Kwang Lao. These are brilliant for anyone wanting to try a hand-to-hand build, as they fortify the skill by a huge 20 points. Though do bear in mind that hand-to-hand is significantly weaker compared to blade and blunt for melee, a fact which I established in my last video, ranking every skill in Oblivion. But it does come with a pretty cool skill of disarming people once you reach level 50, and can certainly make for an interesting and fun way to play. Before you leave this little arena training courtyard though, make sure to stay a little while and watch these two spar. Stand here for about 2 to 2.5 minutes, which does feel like forever in this instance when you're not doing anything, but just observe until eventually getting a notification to say you've picked up some moves, and your hand-to-hand skill has improved by 5. It's actually a very generous skill boost, especially given 5 is the maximum number of times we can use an actual trainer at each level, and hand-to-hand is one of the most slow to level skills. Same with Blade, Blunt, and Marksman. Fortunately, for Blade at least, we can pick up a few bonus levels in much the same way from the blades themselves. Head over now to Cloud Ruler Temple, and outside in the main courtyard, watch these two spar as well, for the same 2 to 2.5 minutes. This time, our observations will instead net us +2 to Blade, and another +2 to block. And maybe make sure to do this one before maxing out either of these. I did try this after maxing out just blades, and the bonus didn't seem to apply, so perhaps I just didn't wait quite long enough. Either way, definitely worth the time in both places to grab up all of these free levels. Alchemy is without a doubt one of the most powerful skills in Oblivion. High-level potions can utterly eradicate the issues of magicka, health, and fatigue regen, with scaling the skill itself meaning we can imbibe and stack even more potion effects at once. A huge 10 at level 100. But, like with all magic skills, alchemy requires a little cheesing to get to that level. It's not nearly as bad as spam casting conjuration summons, but we do effectively need to spam brew a bunch of potions we don't necessarily want, finding ingredients that simply share an effect, any effect, and brewing them for the XP. But this in itself can be time consuming, and a far quicker way of doing it is simply to amass huge amounts of just 2 matching ingredients. Fortunately, Oblivion makes no distinction between food and alchemy supplies, so farms are basically your best bet for this. Outside of Skingrad, to the western side near the stables, is the Surly Vineyard, awash with rows of respawning grapes that nobody seems to mind us harvesting in their entirety. Like many foods, these come with the initial property of Fortify Fatigue, and we can grab about 120 per sweep. Then, running around the corner to the northeast of Skingrad, there's also a tomato patch, where we can pick about 90 tomatoes. These also share Restore Stamina as an initial property, so now it's simply a case of spam brewing Restore Fatigue potions, and in addition to the multiple levels guild will soon be amassing of alchemy, there's no way we're needing all of these potions, so they can be sold off for a hefty amount of gold. You may need to sell them in increments so as to not hit the merchant's wealth cap, but we will be able to get the full value, seeing as how we're selling many cheaper items as opposed to one expensive one that nobody can pay for. Some of the most passively useful enchantments to just have in Oblivion are Water Breathing, Night Eye, and Detect Life. So here's where to find a helmet with all three of them buried deep in the sea. Off the coast of Anvil, by the tiny little island just west of it, you'll want to dive down just to the west side of that. Once getting there, if you zoom into the local map in fact, you'll even see a tiny little mark in the sea where it is. So dive right down and look for this skeleton who apparently died wearing the Fin Gleam helmet. In fact, if you're struggling to breathe from searching for this for too long, then just equip it when you find it, and drowning will no longer become an issue. Nor in fact will seeing down here. It has a lot of practical use, this helm. Not by any means the best piece of armor, but it's pretty light and good to have on hand in an explorer's loadout. Though it does kind of beg the question, if one can't drown whilst wearing this thing, then how the hell did the previous owner wind up dead at the bottom of the ocean? Was he killed beforehand and tossed down here? In which case, why did the killers willingly throw away the helm too? I don't know about you, but this definitely has the humour of Share Gorath written all over it. Though, if you have a better, more fleshed out theory, I'd love to read it in the comments. On the topic of water-based things winding up in places they shouldn't, head to Coral now and seek out the Blackrock Caverns to the north. It's literally where the C for Coral is written on the map. Inside is what appears to be a perfectly normal, unassuming, and multi-leveled dungeon. Not tremendously exciting. I think the dungeon designs of Skyrim are one of the most distinct improvements that game made over this one, but Blackrock Cavern is a bit of an exception. See, when we get into the second part of this dungeon, we'll come into a big room with a hole in the middle. Deal with all the common bandits, and there'll be a trapped exit on your right. Don't go that way. Instead, cross to the other side of the main room and find a very obscure handle here. These don't always spawn properly, so if it's not there for you, then try reloading a save, but otherwise pulling it will block our exit, sending us back through the same door whence we came, where now we'll have to fight off newly spawned ghostly machinations of pirates. Defeat them, and up here, in this right-hand corner, we'll find another lever. Turn that and return to the big room deeper into the dungeon, and now on the left side, a trapdoor will have been revealed. This leads to Blackrock Chasm, yet another secret tunnel, eventually bringing us into a chamber with a pirate ship. Again, defeat the ghosts as well as their captain, and then take a thorough look around. There's a chest on the ship, one behind it, as well as a larger treasure stash to the eastern side of the cave. And these guys had some decent treasure. Mainly gold, but some nice enchanted weapons and armor too. It's a very cool and obscure find, but you do have to ask just how the hell a ship wound up down here, in what is a very similar look to Dunbarrow Cove. I mean, Dunbarrow at least does explain itself. It was a cave-in caused by battle mages, and that one at least was right next to the coast. But Coral is very much inland, so seriously, how and where? Magic? Or maybe lore-accurate Tamriel actually has rivers and canals in this region. It's not a huge ship, after all. The closest we can get to Skyrim in Oblivion involves completing a quest for Countess Narina Carvane of Bruma called Lifting the Veil. She'll send us north into the Pale Mountain Pass to search for the ancient Draconian Madstone amulet. This is an ancient Akaviri amulet with immense power to resist both disease and poison, though the Countess is more so interested as a passionate collector of Akaviri relics. And during the quest itself is actually another hidden quest involving a treasure hunt of locked chests, but I went over that already in my secret quests video. So today, let's look instead at the rewards for completing Lifting the Veil. On returning to the Countess with the Draconian Madstone, she'll thank us and exchange it for the Ring of the Viper Eye rewards, a somewhat decent piece of kit to both fortify agility and resist magic. What you may not realize though is that we can actually keep the Draconian Madstone too. The Countess will give it pride of place in her display cabinet right next to her throne, making it all too easy to crouch behind her, unlock, and pinch back the Madstone for ourselves. It's got 50% resistance to both disease and poison, not of that much value to me as an Argonian, but for any other race, actually pretty useful to wear. Those diseases can really sneak up on you without you realizing, and before you know it, you're massively down on skills and attributes. Or, even worse still, you can no longer fast travel in the sun and have an insatiable craving for mortal blood. If you've spent much time in the Imperial City, no doubt you'll have heard many of the merchants complaining about Thorinir, proprietor of the copious coin purse, who is continually managing to undercut all the other stores in town, procuring more custom for himself at the expense of everyone else. The quest Unfriendly Competition will lead us to investigate Thorinir's business and shady acquisition of goods, eventually landing us in a dangerous situation with his supplier named Agarmir. This guy has been selling Thorinir extremely cheap merchandise, and he's been doing so by robbing the dead. Eventually, he'll confront us down in the Trentius family mausoleum, where we'll have to fight him to the death. Make sure to pick up his debaser sword once winning to drain willpower and endurance, but there's also a second, much easier to miss weapon down here, one for those more geared towards the blunt skill. Behind the middle tomb on the left, stealthily tucked away, is Caliben's Grim Retort. This mace is enchanted to further absorb blunt and strength, effectively empowering it even more on use, as well as dealing flat frost damage. Not the best mace in terms of base damage, but certainly a good one to have for those less advanced in the blunt skill, given how it buffs it. Let's also ignore the fact, though, that we are the ones now grave robbing, having just killed a man for the exact same thing. Now we have become the very thing we swore to destroy. If you missed this during the quest, then you can also return to the mausoleum at any time. It'll still be there. On the eastern side of the Nibben Bay, about here on the map, there's a marked shipwreck called Mouth of the Panther. Head just upriver from that, and you'll immediately come across a bridge with something laying face down in the water. It's a troll, holding a poorly scrawled note and a bottle of Surly Vintage 399, which I hear was a very good year. Reading the note though, we'll learn that this troll's fate was horribly tragic. In a hand of awful spelling, he simply says, "Me worst troll ever, nobody pay bridge toll, me not scary enough, me get drunk and kill self, troll drown." Yeah, this note, whilst incredibly sad and showing this troll was seemingly capable of enough self-introspection to severely dislike itself, also shines a rare light on the actual intelligence of these creatures. I mean, have you ever actually heard a troll speak, or viewed them as anything more than vicious, violent beasts in Elder Scrolls? Though this note suggests that this troll at least fancied itself the toll collector for this bridge, though it clearly wasn't very good at it. And, in my playthrough at least, it had actually been replaced at this point with a Khajiit highwayman. Now, a small part of me does wonder if this note was left as a dark joke of sorts by the Khajiits, but I don't know, I kind of like the idea that trolls are more sentient than we give them credit for, although in a very morbid sense for this one in particular. Chillrend is a sword arguably more popularized by Skyrim. In that game, it's one of the most powerful swords, dealing heavy frost damage and even has the chance to paralyze. Oblivion doesn't do the paralysis part, but does replace it with something arguably better. But first, here's how to get it. In the city of Coral, seek out Valus Odil. He can be found drinking in the Grey Mare, having fled his farm outside town after persistent and unrelenting goblin attacks. But whilst he is content to drink away his sorrows at the tavern, his two sons, Rallus and Antus, are determined to drive back the goblin invaders from the farm once and for all. And unwilling, possibly too cowardly to support his own kin in battle, Valus sends us in his stead. Simply meet the two brothers outside town, accompany them to the farm, then drive back the goblin invaders and make absolutely sure to keep both brothers alive. This can be a pain at higher levels, on higher difficulties especially, but targeted heal spells and powerful attack strategies like weakness destruction magic can of course help. With the main quest done and the brothers alive, returning to Valis will net us the reward of Chillrend, which in this game deals frost damage, but more importantly applies weakness to frost on every hit for the next 20 seconds. Basically meaning the frost damage on subsequent hits will be greater. How much greater depends on the level we obtain it though, with the maximum being a 35% weakness to frost and 20 points of damage at levels 25 plus. So definitely hold off on this one until after reaching that point if you intend for your hero of Kvatch to wield Chillrend as frequently as your Dovahkiin probably does. The Black Hand Robes are the garb worn by the Dark Brotherhood speakers, and in addition to bolstering sneak, illusion, marksman, blade, and speechcraft, it's also one of the coolest looking clothing sets in Oblivion Remastered. Uniquely stand out, yet so very basic, making Lucien Lachance stand out as an important character the first time we meet him. It shouldn't come as a surprise that by progressing the Dark Brotherhood questline, we'll eventually be able to don this awesome looking garb for ourselves, but if you don't want to wait that long, here's how to get it pretty much whenever. In the city of Bruma, head over to Jagasta's house and sneakily break in through the front door. Head down the stairs and to the back room of his house to find a locked keg. Yeah, turns out Jagasta has hidden these robes along the same lines of thinking as Glarthir employed with his golds. But picking this very hard lock open, again most easily with the skeleton key, we can get our hands on some very early Black Hand robes. Just why Jagasta has these hidden around in his house? Dunno mate. Your guess is as good as mine. Regardless, now you can look like a Sith Lord for pretty much your entire playthrough. Arguably, the best bow and best mace in the game now can actually be found not once, but multiple times, potentially. You see, the Oblivion gates in Oblivion actually follow 7 different prefabs, 7 different randomly spawning worlds, if you will, with each having a chance to generate in most of the gates we'll head through. One such world has the items we want, and for the sake of ease, there is one Oblivion gate that always spawns said world. That's the gate directly outside Coral, but again, if you've closed that already, there is still hope that a different gate will spawn the same world. It's the one with the most complex looking series of towers, a big central one and 4 surrounding, all connected by bridges. Finding yourself in this world, you don't actually want to head towards the towers, but rather away, behind the gate in a northwesterly direction, and crossing this collapsed metal gate means you're on the right path. You'll want to head to this islandy area, where, tucked away at the back, hidden from view is a secret door to the fume vaults. Head through these tunnels until coming to another door at the end, leading to the Embers of Hatred. Through here, we'll first have to fight 2 Dremora Keepers, each of which hold a key that we'll need to ascend the tower, at the top of which are 2 blood sacks. Now, usually these are labelled as the Punished, but this time they're called the Forbidden. One contains the Hatred's Heart Daedric Mace, the other Hatred's Soul Bow and Arrows, both dealers of fire damage and drainers of speed. But more than that, their base damage is some of the highest in the game, and if you're a wielder of blunt weapons or a marksman, you absolutely want to get these. And again, even if you've closed the Coral Gate already, keep on going through others, as there is still hope you'll find this world again. Unless of course you've completed the main questline, in which case, yeah, sorry. Heading up high into the northeastern Cyrodiilic Gerald Mountains now, where we can find a unique Nordic bow. The Udaflukta Matron is a secret boss battle reminiscent of the Morrowind Blood Moon expansion set on Solstheim, and also features a callback to one character from said expansion. If you want to know the full lore story, then check out my video on 12 secret quests. But for today, let's take a look at the bow. Found in the stomach of the almost invisible Udaflukta Matron herself, Frostwyrm bow is a piece that once belonged to Svenja Snowsong. Not the best weapon to take up against a creature of the cold, but a decent, unique bow to have, especially in the earlier to mid-game. And perhaps if you're playing as a Nord, you'll maybe find some sentimentality with wielding this thing. Useful against Flame Atronachs especially, and later Spider Daedra, though most undead do have a resistance to it, including vampires. Still, making the trip up here to obtain it and reading the journal left at Dive Rock Camp itself makes for a cool additional piece of world building. This next one is a secret reward that we can obtain during the main quest, Dagon Shrine. During this, we'll be tasked to infiltrate the Mythic Dawn cult, posing as an initiative, and we'll temporarily have to give up all our possessions before being led into a chamber. Once in here, in order to maintain our cover, we'll then be asked to perform the sacrifice of a sleeping Argonian prisoner. Doing so will officially make us an acolyte of the Mythic Dawn, which means escape later will be significantly easier. Though I would recommend taking the more difficult paths of attacking the Mythic Dawn cultists. Bearing in mind we don't actually have any of our stuff at this point, though you may, if lucky, successfully be able to pickpocket some weapons back. These guys will all conjure bound weapons and armor, making them significantly harder to defeat. But doing so successfully and releasing the prisoner called Jeelius before grabbing the Mysterium Xarxes, which would have collapsed the statue on him, he'll then begin to flee the cave as well. Stay close for this, else Jeelius may be killed, but if the two of you escape successfully, then he'll say this.
Thank you for saving me, friend. I don't know who you are, but it is clear that Akatosh guides you. I am a priest in the Temple of the One in the Imperial City. Perhaps our paths will cross again one day.
Now, having done this, heading to said temple in the Imperial City later, we'll run into Jeelius once again.
As a small token of my gratitude, please allow me to share with you some of my small store of knowledge of the healing arts.
He'll then grant +1 to alchemy, restoration, and mysticism, the former two of which are probably the most powerful skills in the entire game, so definitely not to be scoffed at. Plus, there's also just the fact of saving an innocent lizard from a needlessly terrible fate. Goblin Trouble is a small side quest that can be started by heading to Crestwood Camp and involves delving into one of the lesser known complex systems that Oblivion has. See, there are many tribes of goblins around Cyrodiil, and more often than not, they're at war with one another. This usually revolves around one tribe stealing the totem of another, like one giant convoluted game of capture the flags. And we can actually radiantly abuse this system to our own ends, stealing the totem of one tribe and leaving it with another. But this is the only quest to overtly touch on this mechanic, wherein we need to stop the war taking place between the two tribes either side of Cropsford so that these settlers can build a hamlet there. So you can either re-steal the stolen goblin totem back, or simply kill both goblin shamans to complete the quest. With that done, we'll be instructed to return to the then built Cropsford in a few weeks, and doing so, you'll want to head into Binkle's house. Go around the corner and up the stairs to the end here, and under the stairs to the 3rd floor is a reward chest left specifically for us. It's not the most incredible haul of gold ever, but it will frequently respawn, so come back somewhat often and think of it like a little dividend. Shadowbanish wine is the stuff we'll need for the Venerable Vintage side quest, which itself can be started by speaking to Narusa at the Warnet Inn in Way. Oblivion isn't actually huge on fetch quests compared to Skyrim, but this can definitely be considered one. Not a terribly generic one, it's a pretty rare item after all, but a fetch quest all the same. We'll need to bring Narusa 6 bottles of Shadowbanish with the simple tip that it's found in old forts. Luckily, as it happens, we get to call 2 such old forts our homes. 1 bottle of Shadowbanish can be found among the wines in Frostcrag Spire's vaults, with another in the sprawling wine cellar of Battlehorn Castle. That's the initial 2 down, and the next most simple 2 are probably the ones in Fort Grief, where we'll go for the Court and Hunt quest, started itself in Breville by speaking to Alaron Loche. But once inside that fort, all you've got to do is head up these steps outside to find 2 bottles in a chest up on the roof area. Then the final 2 are a bit more of a pain, but we do have plenty of fort options. The rest are labelled on screen now, but I personally found 2 more in Fort Irony, hidden away in the first room in their own chest near a broken bit of wall. The reward for returning all 6 is 1,000 gold, and of course another quest being ticked off. But we can trade any more we find at the reduced price of 100 gold each, almost double their base value of 55, but still, given it's a rarity, I can understand why you might want to keep and hoard the rest for yourself. Oblivion's player homes are generally awesome, especially the ones that were originally DLC. Frostcrag Spire, Deepscorn Hollow, Dunbarrow Cove, and Battlehorn Castle are all specifically oriented to accommodate a mage, assassin, thief, and warrior, respectively, with each home coming with its own little set of secrets to discover. I think Battlehorn definitely wins in this regard, what with a whole hidden quest buried underneath its foundations, which I looked at in my video on secret quests, but Deepscorn Hollow 2 has some pretty cool hidden things buried in its depths. At the very end of this cavern complex is the Shrine of Sithis, a place for a character of high infamy to actually receive blessings from the Father of the Void himself. Pro tip though, even if you're not of high infamy, you can still get this blessing by simply equipping the Grey Cowl of Nocturnal quickly. This will skyrocket your infamy to 100, allowing us to obtain things like Fortify Sneak, Agility, and Health, as well as a 50% chameleon effect for 20 minutes. That's not all that's down here though. In the jewelry box by the statue is the Crimson Eviscerator Dagger, and more obscurely tucked away in the waterfall, a little sack called Greywind's Final Cache, containing gold, jewels, and a ring designed specifically to fortify our speed. Bear in mind, this enchantment is nothing compared to what we can get by stacking Fortify Speed restoration spells, but it is nice to have as an additional bonus perhaps. Upstairs too, once fully upgrading this place, we can also find in a cupboard the raiment of the Crimson Scar armor, one of the most valuable sets in-game, which actually seems to respawn in here periodically. So you might actually be able to sell older sets, though bearing in mind 3,000 is about our earnings limit on a single item, it becomes a little less impressive on that front, but still worth doing. The Imperial City naturally has a fair few places to sleep, and even though you can buy the cheapest house in game to sleep in permanently in the Imperial City waterfront district, you'll also want to pay for a night at the Bloated Float Inn. This is a ship that doubles up as a pub, with an accommodation experience quite unlike any other. You see, going below deck to get a nice paid-for night's sleep will awaken unexpectedly miles out at sea. It seems, whilst we slept, that the Bloated Float was hijacked by pirates who are apparently searching for a hidden treasure on board, and we'll need to fight one of them on each deck, though speaking to each in detail before engaging in combat can make the end of this quest go a little smoother. Eventually, we'll fight our way into the captain's quarters, where we'll meet the brains of this operation called Celine. If we've obtained enough information from the others on her plans though, we'll actually be able to talk her down before locking her in the brig and sailing safely home. But killing her or obtaining her surrender though, Celine will permanently surrender her weapon to us. The Blackwater Blade is a steel longsword which, like Chillrend, will have the highest possible stats if obtained from level 25 onwards. At this point, it'll be enchanted to absorb 20 points of fatigue per second across 12 seconds. Very powerful indeed, since it practically drains an enemy of all their fatigue, leaving them significantly more open to the attack. It's also just got a cool name, and even experiencing the world space of being out on the open ocean makes this one of the more standout, lesser-known quests in Oblivion. This next one is gonna sound mad, and there's a very good reason for that. Once you get to the Shivering Isles, on the mania side of New Sheoth called Bliss, head to the house of Tove the Unrestful. This Nord apparently experiences time completely out of order, and will very often reference things that haven't happened yet, or apologize for not doing something in the past that's only relevant now. But Tove is building something, a skyboat apparently, that's going to float on the water. Of course, in order for the whole contraption to work properly, Tove will need an absolute mass of calipers and or tongs. You know, those generic items found in random containers that you've ignored for your entire playthrough on account of them being nothing but clutter? Well, it's time to stop with that attitude, start searching every random crate and barrel you see, and amass a sprawling collection of these two things so that when Tove comes asking, you, like him, have anticipated the need for such things well ahead of time. We'll need at least 100 of the things collectively, with Tove paying 5 gold for each. And with enough of them finally delivered, the quest will end, with Tove's reaction now actually providing an explanation of sorts as to why he needed these tools in particular.
Calipers? Tongs? What would I need those for? Oh, you must be thinking about the skyboat. Yesterday's news. I'm working on a collapsible fork now. I just have to tear apart the boat to get to the hinges.
Yeah, makes sense. Or then again, perhaps it doesn't. And Calipers and Tongs are not the only thing you'll want to be gathering en masse for the Shivering Isles. You'll also want to pick up pretty much every alchemical ingredient native to this place that you see, starting from before you even walk through the door. There's also a bunch on the island in the Nibben Bay. And when you get a minute, head up to the northeast settlement of Highcross and speak to a somewhat rude Dunmer named Mirali Ulven. She is compiling a bestiary of the various flora and fauna on the Isles, and thus needs samples of, well, pretty much everything. There's not really an in-game way to keep track of what you have and haven't collected, so I find it just easier to pick up everything you see, and whatever you do not waste it on simply leveling alchemy just yet, like I did. That way, when she gives you the list of ingredients, you can at least take note of what you haven't collected yet, and just work from there. The reward for each ingredient isn't incredible, just 10 gold each, but after bringing her a few, she'll offer the much more lucrative opportunity of bringing her live specimens. 4 in total: a Barleywug, Elytra, Gnarl, and Scalon. These can all be found in the general vicinity surrounding Highcross, and can either be lured back to her hostile, or tamed with a command spell if your illusion skill is high enough. For each of these will instead be paid by the hundreds, with all 4 and all the ingredients needed to complete the quest. There's something very satisfying and completionist about finishing this one, so yeah, make sure to get a good head start. Now, remember the manacles I said to keep at the start of the video? Well, here's how to get a particularly rare set in the Shivering Isles. During the main quest over here, called Rebuilding the Gatekeeper, we'll be reunited with Relmina Verenim. She has this chamber deep underground where she performs pain-based experiments on presumably unwilling subjects in a very scientific way, showing no real care beyond her research for how they feel or how much pain they're in, and keeping meticulous notes as to how they reacted to various forms of torture. When we get here though, we can request that she stop. She says then our morality is getting in the way of science, but we'll do as we say on one condition: that we single-handedly take on the full weight of their pain and suffering for ourselves. After all, if we love them so much, surely we would gladly trade places with these poor souls. Going through with it, she'll cast a spell called Exalted Pain, which significantly drains our health, magic, strength, willpower, agility, and endurance. This can simply be cured at a shrine though, and surviving the prisoner's combined suffering, we can speak to Relmina again. She'll call us out as something of a masochist and give us a fitting reward.
Did you like that? Pain can be pleasure. You enjoy being in pain, do you? Here, I'm sure you will enjoy these then.
The Manacles of Pain are not necessarily a beneficial thing to constantly be wearing, as they do fortify strength and willpower, but also drain endurance and intelligence by double the amount. Still, a cool and potentially funny little reward to have that can be easily missed by not pursuing this interaction. These last two can't be found until very far into the game's main questline, past the point of no return in fact, wherein we enter the realm of Paradise to find Mankar Cameron. Before heading into the tunnels of this island though, you'll want to follow the coastline around the right, heading in a general northeast direction, until eventually coming to this rocky outcrop. Now this is somewhat easier to reach with water walking or just 75 in acrobatics, so head up the hill around the back, and at the top will be a unique and secret enemy. The Spectral Mudcrab is somewhat tougher than its corporeal kin, but that doesn't necessarily mean much, it's still a mudcrab. And defeating it should yield a particularly high quality piece of loot, which for me was a warhammer inflicting a high amount of burden. Though in fairness, just carrying the thing inflicted even more burden on myself. There's also an Ayleid reliquary up here, containing even more loot of varying quality. So when you do finally get to Paradise, don't forget to take this little detour around here for this fun, unique mini boss fight. Finally, in Paradise though, we come to the main boss fight itself. Mankar Cameron and his 2 children versus the hero of Kvatch. But something you don't want to do is rush Mankar Cameron immediately. See, both of his children, when defeated, will actually respawn, and so will the contents of their inventories. And on Raven Cameron's body, in particular, we can pick up the Mundane Ring. It's ironic, because in practice, it's probably the most powerful singular piece of jewelry in the game, resisting a full 50% of magic damage and reflecting 35% back on the attacker. And this can be combined with gear like Spellbreaker to easily get that magic reflection up insanely high, with this ring being a core component to that. But the Mundane Ring also has an insane value, and if you hold off on killing Mankar Cameron for a bit, just focus on his children and keep letting them respawn, we can effectively farm numerous copies of this Mundane Ring. Unfortunately, we can only equip one at a time still, else that'd be insanely good, but we can at least sell off the copies. Sadly, nobody in Cyrodiil can actually afford 21,600 in a single transaction, but Norfas Amelian at the Merchant's Inn of the Imperial City Market District can at least get up to 3,000 gold. So hey, all you gotta do is farm about 7 or 8 of these, and you'll be able to sell them all for the value of a full 1. Just a nice money-making opportunity near the end of the main questline. I don't know, maybe you haven't bought and furnished all the houses yet and want some more money towards that. If you want to learn about all of those though, then check out my Player Homes Ranked video next. But otherwise, comment below any other cool, potentially secretive loot you found in Oblivion Remastered and where. Huge thank you, as always, to the patrons for going the extra mile to support the channel and videos like this, and thank you, of course, for watching. I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you in the next one.